Hey sexies, happy Thursday. It's me, SexDrHeather. Hey. So I am doing this short video just to talk about why it's important to have premarital therapy. Premarital therapy or pre-cohabitation therapy, we can call it a few different things because not everybody, the end goal for them is getting married, right? It might not be, or it might be. So, in any event, you need to have some kind of therapy where you guys can explore each other's values, which is really important. Sometimes I ask my clients when they come in just really simple questions. I mean, I think it's simple, but it's proving not to be. So an example would be, or how many kids do you guys want? Or do you want kids at all? And sometimes you should see the expression on on the faces of some of the couples, because the answers are like, wait a minute, you didn't say that when we talked before, or I never knew that. So I'm thinking, okay, you guys been together for 2 years, 3 years. Sometimes people wait a little longer, but when they get to me, I feel like maybe you should know that your partner wants 5 kids and you only want one, or you want none. Some people know these things, but some people don't. So I'm not talking about everybody. Everybody is different. Some people have great communication because they learn that. It's kind of a learned behavior from growing up. You go back to when you were a child and some of the values. I said values. You explore each other's values. And I'm pretty sure some partners they grew up in a different environment, and of course it was a different environment. You had different parents, but you could share some of the same values, is what I am speaking specifically about. So you need to go to premarital therapy for, number one, to explore each other's values, like really deeply, getting to a really deep conversation around some of the things that you are accustomed to, and some of the things you believe in. And you might think that you touched the surface of this in your relationship, but when you get to therapy, sometimes things come out that you wouldn't normally say in front of your partner, that you would say in therapy, because you feel maybe a little bit more comfortable, and maybe that you have this third neutral person who can hear you and who can assist with the dialogue in helping each partner understand what the other partner is communicating, if that were a problem in the past. Another thing that premarital therapy does for couples is you kind of explore and learn about the relationship dynamics. An example of relationship dynamics would be gender roles, you know, roles of extended family, communication, which goes back to, your values. Communication is like all over everything, because that's the basis of your success in a relationship, like how well you communicate. Even if you don't communicate like spot on, if you have some form of healthy communication, you will be okay, because then you will start to build upon that healthy communication, like building blocks, and learn how your partner communicates. And then you'll learn how to communicate with your partner, and then your partner to communicate with you, and you communicate as the couple system, right? So, and then we have problem solving skills, which is part of the relationship dynamic. Have you and your partner thought about how you resolve problems? When problems come up in the relationship, how do you resolve them? Like, do you sit down and say, here are some issues we have. How can we get over this hump? How can we get to the other side of this issue? Do we need to make action step plan? Like, who does that? I know I can speak for myself. I take notes on maybe a weekly basis. I take notes. I say, okay, these are the talking points for the next conversation. So maybe, that's a tip. Everybody has these smartphones nowadays, which are fabulous. I don't even know how I survived without a smartphone before in the past. I mean, I don't know, because now everything is like notes, 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 notes. It's like notes for everything in my smartphone. I'm like, how did I, in my calendar? I mean, if you, how did we survive without a calendar? Because I got 15 things on my calendar every day, and I'm like, I know I didn't always have this smartphone and this calendar, even when I was busy before, because I was busy before, So anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent. But anyway, so to get back to what I'm talking about, why premarital therapy is important, I'd like to talk a little bit about gender roles. So I kind of printed something out because I really know that gender roles have changed a lot, and thankfully they have changed, I'm going to say. They still socialize men to be focused on tasks and to fix things and to resolve situations, and to find themselves in individualistic and separate ways, and to avoid perceived risk of intimacy. Whereas women are socialized to find meaning through attachment, feel that separation is unsafe and threatening to express emotions and be caregivers. I'm talking about, these are the gender roles that have come from a long time that are now thankfully changing. These gender roles have been problematic since the beginning. Hence the current expectations that might often feel daunting and hopeless. So women are more, we were taught to view sex as dangerous and to avoid expressing or demonstrating sexual interest, while men, however, are taught to pursue sex, basically, and to derive personal value from sexual expression. So let's talk about that really quickly. If this is something, if these gender roles are playing out in your relationship or in your life and you're unhappy about the dynamic of the gender roles, this is a conversation that you can have with your partner. This is a relationship dynamic. If you feel that your sexual expression isn't warranted like your male counterparts is, then this is a conversation you have to have. Talk about your sexual expression. Sit down. And I know this seems like, how can I do this? So I'm going to give you an example. So your partner and you are sitting down, and I always suggest going somewhere other than where you live. So if you do live together, I say go somewhere else, because sometimes you get stuck in a comfortability, and it stops you from having an open mind around certain things, because you're set in this comfort, right? So when you get upset or you kind of get a blockage or you feel attacked, you kind of just go off and go into your room where you are safe, right? Which can present a problem, because then you might not be so open to hear feedback or be in a mood that is more loving and kind, let's just say. So I say, go out for a walk, go for a drive, and pull over somewhere and talk. Or I don't suggest going to the movies. Some people say no, you can't talk in the movies. You got to be quiet, okay? And you got to turn your cell phones off. So I say, definitely get out and go somewhere and talk. Figure out where, and then go and talk somewhere else other than the house. But if you feel like the house is somewhere that you can have an effective conversation, then go for it. That's just an example and a suggestion. So when you get with your partner and let's say you have a problem with how every time y'all have intercourse, your partner doesn't make sure you have an orgasm, right? So let's just be clear that each and every time, so let's just say there's 7 days in a week, okay? And you guys have intercourse 4 days of the 7 days a week. And 4 days of the 7 days a week, sometimes never, your partner makes sure you have an orgasm. They have one, you don't. And it's constant. So it's been going on for a few weeks and maybe a few months. And out of the few months, maybe you've had 3 orgasms, and that's just not enough for you. You are just unhappy. So how do you say something to your partner? How do you say, hey, I'm just not satisfied right now. I think that I need to bring this to your attention. That's how you say it. You sit down, you say, we have to have a conversation about our sex life. Like, I'm really unhappy about. So let me take that back. So that's not what you start with. You start with, I want to have a conversation about our sex life. Are you open to having this conversation? And when they say yes, then you say, okay, so I love the way you touch me. If that's the truth, you say something that's the truth. I love the way you caress me. I love the way you kiss me. It's great. It really turns me on. However, I notice that when we have intercourse, you have the orgasm and I usually don't. Now, every time we have intercourse, it's okay that I don't have an orgasm each and every time. But if we're having intercourse 4 times throughout the week, I'd like to have at least 2 orgasms a week. So, you have to meet in the middle. You have to compromise, because if you're having 0 and they're having 4, that creates a problem after a while. I don't know how long you would sit in something like that and be okay, but people do. People will sit in that for a really long time, and some people will start to see other people or please themselves and just become distant and start taking their partner for granted. It's all kind of things that can happen from the lack of connection when you have your lack of sexual expression with your partner, okay? So just keep that in mind. You can sit down and have a very healthy, positive, kind, loving conversation about. Just don't say, you did this, you did that. I can't. Just remember that you want to encourage the person to want to participate in your orgasm, So just remember that. So also going back to premarital therapy. So also premarital therapy or pre-relationship therapy or pre-cohabitation therapy, you want to talk about your fears. You want to share your fears with each other in therapy. So that's a place where things come up that might not have come up before, like I mentioned a little bit earlier. So that's a great thing to do. Share your fears. And the last thing I want to talk about, because this video is getting a little long, and I kind of gotta go, but it's okay. Learn if your partner is truly ready for marriage and what that actually looks like. So I know that sounds simple, but some people, I'm not gonna say most people, I'm gonna say some people think that marriage fixes problems. They think you got 15 problems before you get married, and then you'll have maybe 3 after you get married, right? But that's wrong, 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 wrong. So those 15 problems that you have before you get married, they'll become 30 problems after you get married, okay? So after that whole euphoria and honeymoon stage is like, now I'm talking about people who aren't working on things. I'm talking about people who definitely have a misconception of marriage and who don't understand that what marriage looks like, okay? So this is something that you have to do when you go to therapy, premarital, pre-relationship, pre-cohabitation therapy. Talk about what it looks like with your therapist, with each other, and if you have a great therapist, your therapist should go through all these stages with you, okay? So just make sure you are aware of what you need. And let me just say, this is not only for pre, this is also for post too. So post cohabitation, when you're already married, when you're already partnered, okay, with someone, you definitely need all of this, all right, to survive. And especially, it's so much going on today with technology and social media. People you tend to take your partner for granted, okay? And then you're working all day, then you got kids, then you're tired, then you don't want to have sex. So just know that being in a partner relationship is work. Don't let anybody tell you, because sometimes I hear these podcasts and I watch these videos and I'm like, what are they talking about? You have to put in some work, okay? It is not hard. It shouldn't be challenging to the point where you're like, put your hands up in the air. But it should be work that you want to do. Like the type of work that brings you joy. Your partner should add to your joy, okay? Your already joy that you have. So just remember that. All right, so I'm Sex Dr. Heather, and today we talked a little bit about premarital and when you're married, pre-cohabitation and post-cohabitation therapy, and why therapy is important. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, put a comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel, SexDrHeather, at the bottom of the screen, and then drop me a comment. Peace.